I'm always sort of inspired by these conversations with modern authors, but my talk with Charlie was one that certainly got like my head spinning. And I think what Charlie really is an example of is truly like a modern author in how he came to this process. He was someone who was on a very traditional path and really had to kind of blaze and invent his own way. And I think for anyone who's trying to think about their role as a creative, as a creator, the stories that you'll hear in this conversation with Charlie like are kind of mind-blowing in an amazingly good way. And I'm really grateful to get to spend time with him. I think a couple things that I really loved about him was this idea of embracing being unconventional. And so as you think about your own process as an author, as a creator, remember that there are no standard playbooks anymore. What used to work 10 years ago with the dawn of the internet and the explosion of everything just doesn't exist. So be unconventional and use that as your advantage. Number two, that you want to use this book and this creation as a tool. You want to use it as a way to really to connect with interesting people, but it's rarely a straight line. Like some of the most interesting conversations and connections that have happen because one person you work with on this project introduces you to someone else. But as Charlie says, you can architect that. And that's the thing that I love about his conversation. And then lastly, remember the following, and this is the biggest piece, is that so much of our lives, we sort of feel like there's a lot of shoulds. And I think what Charlie really wants all of us to do when we want to embrace our inner creative is to choose your own beliefs of what you need to be and what you need to do. No one's going to force your hand in how you think and how you believe. So you have that opportunity. And in particular today, it's an amazing world, but you have to choose it. Awesome conversation with Charlie. I think for anyone who's thinking about life, career, about creativity, all these things, he's a good one to learn from. Certainly his book Played Away is one that I've loved to read and see. If you enjoy conversations just like this with modern authors like Charlie and others, please do subscribe. We'd love to hear what you think about this one, and do let us know for other guests you want to hear. Remember, the biggest thing about being a modern author is stop writing alone. Find a community, learn from other people, be unconventional, as Charlie said. Enjoy our conversation.
If you're doing something you're strong in, which is where StrengthsFinder comes in, right? Can you master this? Can you keep using it? Do you have autonomy? Do you have the freedom? Are you not being micromanaged? Do you have the freedom to play by your own rules and get things done based on how you want to get them done? And do you have relationships that you respect and admire? If you have those three elements, you have an environment that can facilitate work is play for you. So that's why I'm such a believer in I call it giving a gift. I used to call it free work, which is like the work should be enough in itself. I had to try and figure something else out, and I found myself spending a few months applying to, back then they didn't have one-click applications, so I was applying to over 100 jobs, and I got ignored by all of them. And so all the guys who are on Tinder in here know what that's like to be messaging a bunch of places and it just disappearing into a black hole and not hearing back, right? The only two companies I heard back from, one was a staging company, moving staging equipment for musicians, and the other was a pyramid scheme. I was about to go do the interview, and then I researched them, and it was like, no, this is a scam. Don't do it. The advice I was given just does not work. Straight up. This is a horrible strategy. That's not going to lead to anything. I was meeting up with a group of friends at a bar, and we were all having drinks, and one of them was super excited because they just landed a sales rep position at Verizon Wireless selling cell phones. I was like, I know what he just went through to get that job, which was 6 figures in student loans, plus the months of applying to jobs that required a college degree and getting ignored. And now he's accepting this sales rep position. I had a conversation with my parents who, as I said, they were like, go get your MBA. My dad was like, just get a job as a landman in the oil and gas industry.
So you gave yourself a 60-day window. You put in sort of like this is my time. I'm going to make this commitment.
I was more just like, okay, who do I really admire and respect? Who do I want to work with? What type of person do I want to work with? I started reaching out to entrepreneurs and authors initially, people who I knew were running a business or were doing work that I felt mattered.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the people was Ramit Sethi, who at the
Mm-hmm.
time was he was not a well-known famous
Right.
blogger like he is today.
How much time did you spend then to obviously, that's not like trivial, right? But what would you say,
Right.
like, you invested in him to give you some kind of a shot?
A day of work, like maybe a half day. And then
Mm-hmm.
that's what I tell people is like, my whole strategy is around, you don't apply to jobs. You come to people with a gift of value and you just give it to them without expectation. You say, I love what you're doing. You come from a sincere place. I love what you're doing. I believe in it. I also saw that you have some potential challenges you're running up into in your next level of growth for your company or where you're trying to go. Here's a solution, I believe, that you could implement. I can either do this for you because I'm skilled in this or I'm able to do it, or I've already done it for you. Michael Ovitz, the former CEO of Disney, told me that's exactly how I started my career is I came to them from a place of giving value. And the key mindset shift I realized was I stopped waiting for people to assign me work, which is what school conditions you to do. I looked at your website. It sucks. I redesigned it. Here's what you need to get to that next level. By the way, if you ever need somebody that you want to partner up with or you want to work with on an ongoing basis, I'm your guy. This guy wanted to work for Pixar and he wanted to be an animator. He got rejected because of they don't sponsor people in the UK. And so he was like, so I decided to make my own animated film. I wrote the story. I joined a Facebook group full of college student animators. I compiled a team of 30 people and I had Zoom calls with them where I showed them, here's what needs to happen next in the story. Here's what needs to get edited. He made his animated. Stop waiting. Just go do what you want to do and give and don't wait for a paycheck. So you'll be waiting a long time. If you want to work with a famous person or somebody who's exceptionally high profile, this strategy applies as well to you. I worked with somebody recently who's like trying to work with Brene Brown. And I'm like, you can't, it's not a direct path. You have to triangulate. And I viewed every single opportunity, every single piece of work I did as this is moving me closer to that goal. You get to choose your beliefs. If you don't examine your beliefs, if each day you're just like, nothing's ever going to work for me, I'm going to die cold and alone and afraid. Like, yeah, you probably will, so you got to kind of actively choose who is the person I'm going to be. And I'm so grateful that I have to take on this additional work to get there because it's shaping me into that person. I love StrengthsFinder. And so if you're showcasing, here's what I'm strong in, it makes you more reputable and authoritative, even if you have no experience, right? I was just writing about like, here are 3 marketing ideas for Comcast. I gained a little bit of a following, and one of those people was Tucker Max, who, he's a 4-time New York Times bestselling author. At the time, he was making one of his books into a movie. He and I was his videographer on his movie tour. Ramit was the only one who I explicitly asked, like, hey, would you be willing to make an introduction to Tim? I have some ideas for him. And so you can actually read, there's a blog post. If somebody wouldn't mind posting the link to this, I would appreciate it. It's the 12 lessons learned while marketing the 4-hour body. If you ever want to work with a high profile person, you can't do it straight shot usually unless you have a ton of experience or really reputable endorsements. And so go work with people they already know, like, and trust, do an outstanding job, and then get recommendations. I did a virtual internship with Seth Godin that 200 other people had signed up for. And so they were like, what are you doing working for this random guy in New York we've never heard of on your computer remotely? And I said, you guys don't know him. He's very famous in the marketing world. Business people know this dude. And I know that if I just stick with this, there's only going to be like 5 people left. And by the end of the internship, there were, I think, a dozen. And so a big part of it was, I knew enough other people who were like a little bit crazy, right? Who wanted
Yeah.
similar things. Maybe this Seth Godin guy is somebody. When he posted mine and a dozen other interns' PDFs, our resumes basically on his blog, and I got, I think 20 companies or employees reaching out to me. Be very clear about documenting my progress. And I would do it on my blog. I would show them. It was like, I had to have visual proof that I'm not nuts. We get out of college and there's this frantic rush to figure everything out and to get into something that pays the bills. And it's like, you're talking about at least the next 2-3 years of your life.
Right.
Why not take the time to really focus on a strategy that can actually get you there? You are not working for tomorrow. You are fine with today. You can find what you love and enjoy it and put yourself in flow. And the work in and of itself is complete.
Interesting.
And researchers have found that the highest levels of performance, right? Everybody talks about start with why. You got to have a mission. You got to have a purpose.
Right.
Purpose is the second highest indicator of performance. Third is like pressure, right? Economic pressure, pressures at work, like people telling you to do things, outside pressure. The highest performance indicator is play. Is this fun? Is this rewarding? Do I have autonomy? Am I using my strengths to master this skill set? Am I playing with people that I respect and admire? One of the happiest people I know is a guy named Sean. He's one of the most prolific authors on the planet. He's published I think hundreds of books at this point under various names. And the way he does it is he goes on walks and he records himself telling stories. He never types a word. He gets it transcribed, hands it off to an editor, publish, move on to the next one. So do what's going to be fun for you.
There was a guy, his name's James, is it Patterson? Patterson? I think he's one of his authors. He basically does that. He writes an 80-page outline. And I think last year he made $80 million by writing outlines, hand them to ghostwriters, and publishing.
Yeah.
So
he doesn't write some of his stuff anymore because he's
very
got
little of it. Does he?
Great people around him. I mean, there's that famous concept of who, not how, right? So making a list of every task that's required of you to finish the book and saying, am I proficient in this? And am I passionate in this? And if you're not both, you got to figure out somebody else who can help you with that. Make it as fun as possible.